Hey everybody, how's it going? Seth Williams here from REtipster.com. Today, I'm really excited. We're going to talk about PropertyRadar, and specifically how you can use PropertyRadar to pull lists of highly motivated sellers across the country. And PropertyRadar is a website that I've heard about for years from a lot of different people who all seem to love it. But I was always kind of hesitant to learn a whole new website because it takes a lot of time to do this. And I've got other data services that I use and have been pretty happy with. But because I've heard so much about PropertyRadar, I figured it was about time for me to dive into this thing and really understand what it can do and who it's for, and whether it's a good fit for you. Actually, I shouldn't say that. You need to be the best judge of whether it's a good fit for you, but I can at least show you how it works and what I do and don't like about it. And I'll just start this right off the bat by saying I'm impressed. PropertyRadar is pretty awesome from what I've seen so far. And granted, I've only been using it for a few days now, so I can't say I'm like the utmost expert at it, but I've, generated enough lists and researched enough properties to feel like I have a fairly decent handle on it. And also, coming from the world of other data services, I know what some of the other competitors out there bring to the table, so I have a pretty good idea for what PropertyRadar has to offer versus some of the other data services out there. So I've actually got another video where I talk specifically about how to do due diligence and research one specific property with PropertyRadar, and that is one use case scenario for this. But in this video, we're going to talk about just how to generate marketing lists so you can find very specific, hyper-targeted people that you want to reach out to, either for the purpose of buying their property or possibly selling your property to them. So REtipster does have an affiliate link to PropertyRadar if you want to check it out. It's retipster.com/PropertyRadar. I'll have a link to that beneath this video as well. And at the time of this recording, this is what the homepage looks like. And it's pretty easy to try it out for free if you want. You can sign up for a free trial for, I think it's about 3 days. You can kind of get a feel for what it has to offer before you pay anything for it. And there's also different pricing based on whether you want to pay annually and commit to a whole year at a time. That would be $79 a month for the complete subscription. That's what I'm currently using. Or if you just wanted to do month by month, it's going to be a little bit more expensive per month, but then you don't have to commit to a whole year at a time. So the reason that I would recommend most people do complete if you run a business, anything like mine, like if you're a property flipper or a land flipper of any kind, is that this is going to give you up to 10,000 leads per month that you can export at a cost of 1 cent per lead. And if you know anything about what other data services charge per lead to download and export leads like this, that is very, very inexpensive. There's also a lot of other benefits and features that come with this. But anyway, that's how you can sign up, and that's what I'm currently using. So once you sign up for PropertyRadar and get into the website, the first thing you're going to see is this thing right here with a bunch of different tutorial videos. And I got to say, I actually thought these tutorial videos are very, very good. I spent a bunch of time watching each one of these, probably a couple times. What I like about them is that they're very value-packed and they're very short. So you can actually figure out quite a bit of stuff without spending hours trying to learn the software. The software itself is actually pretty well designed and it's not that hard to figure out. But for the average person who's just getting in there for the first time, they're probably going to need some pointers on where they should go and what they can even do with it. And this covers just about everything in some very succinct videos, depending on what you want to use it for. So these videos are definitely not a waste of time. In fact, a lot of what I'm going to show you right here in this video is explained in these videos. So if at any point I lose you, or if I'm not covering something that you want to know about, rest assured you can probably find the answer right here. They also have a pretty decent help area, and you can even email customer support and get answers that way too. But once you get out of here and actually get into the website, so it's going to drop you right here where it shows My Lists. And this is going to have every single list you've ever created, unless you delete one of the lists, then it's not going to show it. But this is like an archive of all your lists. And I'm going to go through this screen in a little bit more detail later on in this video. But first, I'm going to show you how you can go about just creating a list from scratch. If you're just starting from nothing, how do you do that? Well, all you got to do is go up here to this little hamburger menu thing and click on Discover. And one thing I want to show you before we actually start building our list is this Explore button. And at first I was like, okay, whatever, this is like kind of a gimmick, no big deal, until I saw in this video, I think it is Discover List of Potential Customers and Deals, that explains why these heat maps are useful. And I'll just explain some of that stuff to you right now. So for example, let's say you are working in a new market or even a market that you're already familiar with. You can go ahead and check this little heat map box if it's not already checked. And it's going to show you a lot of different data in a visual format, so you can pretty easily understand what types of properties and property owners are in different places throughout that market. For example, let's say we're looking for areas where there might be a retirement village or a higher concentration of older people or seniors that own real estate. Well, we could go over here and scroll down to owner age right here. And it's going to have this heat map here. And if we go ahead and zoom in a little bit more, just looking at these colors, we can see what it's telling us. Any place that we see this greenish to yellowish color, that's like ages 25 through, mid 40s. And then any place that we see this orangish to reddish color, those are the 50s and above. So if we kind of zoom in a little bit more here, we can kind of see where these people are. And in this case, they're kind of speckled all over the place. But sometimes if there is a particular area where there's a lot of young people or a lot of older people, it can just kind of stick out like a sore thumb for you here. Right here in this area. So it looks like I'm seeing a lot of orange and red. So, most of the property owners here would be in their 40s or 50s or above. Or if we go over here, so now I'm seeing a lot more green and yellow in this area. Now, why is this useful? Well, let's say, for example, if you were specifically trying to find people who are older or younger for whatever reason, and you're trying to send them a message to catch their attention and resonate with them. Well, you might communicate differently or say different things in your message to a group of people that's older rather than younger, or vice versa. So, that can be useful. And also sometimes, age ranges might have different motivations to sell or buy or whatever you're trying to reach them to do. Another example here might be, let's say we're looking for vacation home where the owner does not live at that property year round. So we could go up here to ownership, and it's going to show us which of these properties are owner occupied, which of them have an owner in the county, which of them have an owner out of county but in the state, and which of them have an owner out of state. And that can just kind of give us an idea for which one of these properties have the owner like right there, like the owner actually lives in the property, and which ones have an owner who may be a little bit more disinterested because they're not even in the area and the property is kind of out of sight, out of mind. We don't really know that, but it could be an indicator. And this just shows us really clearly based on which ones are blue versus red, which ones have the owner right there in the property versus not right in the property. And sometimes if you can find a big cluster of red properties, that could indicate that this is an area with a lot of like vacation homes. Like I'm seeing this one right here, seeing a lot of properties with red right there. Whereas other ones like this, all the properties are pretty much blue in this area. So that can be another useful application for these kind of heat maps. You can also use this to find, higher end or lower end properties. Say if you're looking for Class A neighborhoods with like luxury homes, or Class C neighborhoods with really moderately or low priced homes. Well, you could do that going up here to estimated value. And again, this will point properties out based on their value. So anything that is a greenish or darker green color would be the lower end cheaper properties. Anything that is, orange or red is the higher end properties. And, you can just see it right there. And sometimes you'll find neighborhoods where there's a bunch of red properties all clustered together. And sometimes you'll find ones where there's a lot of these green ones all clustered together like this. So I don't know anything about this neighborhood, but just based on these colors, it would imply that maybe this is a Class C or even Class D neighborhood. That can be another useful way to use these heat maps, which could be particularly useful if you do driving for dollars. This could help point out certain neighborhoods that you ought to be checking out and driving through, or even if you just aren't aware of how certain neighborhoods work, like who lives there, what their ages are, what the values are, that kind of thing. This can just point out a lot of those potential opportunities for you. So there's that. Up here in the navigation bar, there's also this lookup feature, which is a whole separate video that I made. So I'm going to link to that beneath this video. If you want to check that out, feel free to do that. But the next step is actually building a list from scratch. How do we do this? So it's actually very similar to any other data service out there. I've got videos on DataTree and PropStream and other data services. It works a very similar way if you're at all familiar with that. If you're not familiar with that, I'll just do one for you right here. So we're going to start by picking out a state and a county, and you don't have to start this way. You could start with like a city or a zip code if you wanted to, but I'm going to start with a state and a county. Let's start in Florida, and we will add this to the criteria. And you'll notice that anytime you specify anything, it's going to show that right up here in this little search bar thing. So now that we got that, we'll go over here to the county, and let's try Polk County, Florida. and we will add this as well. Keep in mind, you can add multiple counties and multiple states here if you want. So you don't have to drill down to one county and be stuck with that. You could do pretty much whatever you want here. For example, if I were to also look in Orange County, Florida, you'll notice it will include both of those now. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that one just for simplicity's sake. Now, if we go down here to quick lists, so this is one thing I want to point out because I think this is super valuable because it gives you a lot of different pre-picked, canned ways that you can go about finding certain types of potential motivated sellers or just groups of people who may be interested in certain things, depending on what industry you're in. So for example, if you're an attorney, you can find a bunch of different pre-vetted list types to choose from. Or if you're running some kind of political campaign, you can find other types of preset filtering criteria. And it doesn't just show you how they're filtering it, it also explains why do this? What is the benefit of targeting this particular type of property owner? So I just found that really useful, not only because they just give you all the information right there, they're not trying to keep it a secret, but also if you're using some other data service, you could take this stuff and apply it there as well if you wanted to. But PropertyRadar just makes it really easy and serves it right up to you. Of course, that doesn't mean that you're going to have amazing success with this, but if you're just out of ideas or if you've tried other things that aren't working for you, you could resort to this and try some of this stuff, or even try this as a starting point and then build onto it. So for example, I'm an investor, and you can see there are a ton of different ways you can filter as a real estate investor. For example, mechanics liens. So properties that have a mechanics lien, especially one that remains open for a while, typically indicate either that the owner is having financial difficulty or is in a dispute with a contractor who did work on the property. And it shows you what filtering criteria is being used to find those properties. Now, I have never filtered a list this way before, so I don't know if this works for the types of properties that I go after, but that's part of the value because I didn't even really know this was a thing that people did because I've just never really tried it. So this can give you a lot of new, fresh ideas that might be worth pursuing. There's a ton of stuff that could be used here. Another example here is missing landlords. So this is basically saying that it's filtering it based on landlords that aren't picking up their mail where they have their tax bill mailed, and that it's possibly a sign of a distressed seller. So we could say, sure, let's add that to the list as well. But something else we could add is also a tired landlord, which is right over here. If we go back to investor, go back to tired landlord, and this is saying that a tired landlord is somebody who basically bought the property about 15 years ago. And that's something that was not included in the missing landlord criteria. So we could add this as well to whittle down our list even further and get hyper specific about the types of property owners we're looking for. And if at any point you're like, no, I don't think I really want to use that, all you got to do is go here and just remove it and you'll be all set. Okay, so those are the quick lists. Again, that alone is super, super valuable. Going on now to the property section. So this is a pretty familiar part of every data service. This is where you can just specify what types of properties you're looking for, and even beyond the property type, like the property specifics, the size of it, or how many bedrooms and bathrooms, and how old the property is, and that kind of thing. So property type as a land investor, what I would typically be doing is just going here and searching for land, and I can also select this drop-down arrow to get even more specific about what type of vacant land I'm looking for, because not every vacant land property is the same. In fact, almost none of them are the same unless they're all infill lots in the same subdivision. So we can go here and select or deselect anything that we do or don't want to be going after. And one quick side note here. So one of my questions about PropertyRadar that I still don't really have the answer to is where they're pulling their data from. And data services like this, the typical answer is just that we're pulling it from the public records, which is no duh, obviously. But the bigger question is, which actual giant nationwide database is this pulling it from? Is it coming from Black Knight or CoreLogic, or First American, or individual MLS systems in every single market, or multiple, or all, or none of them? Which ones are they coming from? And I never actually got the answer, and I think that's kind of like proprietary information because they don't actually want you to know. But as I was looking through these options for vacant land, I noticed that some of them looked very, very similar to what I see in DataTree, which comes from First American. For example, when I see options like Greenbelt, Wasteland, Wildlife Refuge, or Barren Land, or Marshland. So these are labels that I typically just see in DataTree that I don't see in other systems. like RealQuest, which pulls it from CoreLogic, or SiteX Pro that pulls it from Black Knight. So this is pure speculation, but that to me is a hint that they're pulling their data from First American, or at least that's one of the many places they're pulling it from. And that's another point, is that I do know that their data comes from multiple sources. Some of it is coming from the government census data. Some of it is coming from probably individual county assessors. The reason I say that is because a lot of the different property profiles will include information that I know DataTree doesn't have. So this is not an indication that First American is the only place it's pulling it from, but it could be a hint that it's one of the places. So just keep that in mind. So anyway, that is how I would filter my vacant land properties. I would actually probably take some of these out, but just keep it simple. I'm going to leave it like that. And then if I wanted to, I could also sort it further by acreage. For example, if I'm only looking for properties between 5 and 20 acres or whatever it is I'm looking for, I could put that in here. So it needs a second to load, and then it's all set. And then we can go back here. Now, also keep in mind, if for some reason I was trying to get like even more specific, and I don't just want lots between 5 and 20 acres, but I also want lots between 40 and 100 acres, I can do that as well and get that specific. So it's not like I'm only allowed to go 5 to 100 acres. I can create however many boxes I want to when specifying the types of properties I'm going after. Now moving on down the list, so when it comes to owner, so this is something that a lot of other data services do not have, or at least they don't make it this easy. So you can only include property owners that do have an available phone number or email address that you can skip trace and get that information as well. Other data services like PropStream, for example, might allow you to skip trace your list after you pull it, but I guess I'd have to check again. I'm not sure if they allow you to like exclude the ones where there's no phone number available. But anyway, that's something you can do in PropertyRadar. You can also filter based on age. I know this is something that I've seen in some, but not all data services like this. But say if we're only looking for people between the ages of 50 and 80 years old, we could do that here. And it looks like, we're officially being maybe a little too restrictive with our list based on the information that PropertyRadar has. So like something I might do is maybe like remove this thing about the purchase date being 15 years ago. I don't know that I would really want to do that. And that alone didn't really make any change to our list. So we could also get rid of this whole thing or just widen the box a little bit when it comes to the property sizes, that kind of thing. So that's just another thing that you'll want to keep an eye on, is that whenever you see this list get down to a really, really low number, like so low that it's not going to work for you, whether it's 0 or like 2 or something like that, that just means that with the information that PropertyRadar has from whatever databases it's pulling from, you're tightening the grip a little bit too much. And you just have to start removing some of these things until that number gets bigger. We can go ahead and go back here. You can also sort based on marital status or gender, or whether there are children at home, whether they're in the same county or same state, or the ownership type, whether it's a trust or corporation or multiple owners. You can also filter based on the number of properties owned. A lot of other data services will let you do this, but some of them, I'm looking at you, DataTree, charge a lot more money in order to use this single filtering criteria. But based on what I'm seeing here from PropertyRadar, I'm not seeing any extra cost. But, say you could search for people who own between 5 and 100 properties, and now it will only show us the property owners that own between those numbers of properties. So if you want to contact portfolio owners with the hope of, reaching out to fewer people who control more than one property, that would be one way to do it. So just right there, when it comes to the owner criteria, there's all kinds of stuff you can do, which is super useful. And you can also filter based on the value and equity, property tax. It looks like there is the delinquent property tax filtering option here. However, I'm always hesitant to use this thing because very often it's way outdated or not available at all. So this is one of those things, again, I don't know for sure where PropertyRadar is getting its data from, but based on my history with other data services, I would not trust this. Like if this is a super important filter to you, I mean, you could certainly try it, but I wouldn't count on this particular one being dead on accurate. You could also search based on the annual property tax amount if that's something that matters to you. You kind of get the idea. If you sign up for PropertyRadar, just trust me, there is a ton of different options here and a lot of flexibility in how you can filter your mailing lists. So I'm going to remove this here. By the way, don't take what I'm doing here too seriously in terms of how I'm filtering this list. I'm not really doing this seriously. I'm just playing around with stuff just to show you some of the different ways you can filter it. And a few other things to be aware of here. So over here, we can click on this Polygon tool and like draw on the map to say, we only want to look at the properties in this circle or in this polygon. So if you are really certain about a geographic area that you want to target, you can do that. You don't have to focus on an entire county or a specific zip code. You can use this and just be super flexible with how you want to do that. And I'm not actually trying to do that, so I'm just going to click remove and be done with that thing. And also when you go up here to view, so there's a bunch of different ways that you can view this stuff on the screen. So you could also do this grid view, which is basically just going to show it to you as a spreadsheet. And this is really nice because, you know, if you're at all familiar with using spreadsheets, I mean, it's pretty much just like that, but maybe even easier because you can take this stuff and like move it around however you want it to be. Say if we wanted the equity column to be over here, we can do that and just move it. Super simple. Or if we wanted the owner information to be over here, we could do that too. And we can also sort this based on whichever criteria we want to. So we could say, let's sort it in ascending order to show the least amount of equity first, or descending order to show the most amount of equity first. You get the idea. And you can also view this as a card view. And this is basically just going to show you a lot of information about each property in a card. And this is going to take up a ton of space. So I wouldn't usually do it this way when looking at lists, but you could if you wanted to. Or you could do this split view. And this almost kind of reminds me of the good old days of Agent Pro 24/7 and how that used to be laid out. Now, once you've got all your criteria set and you're ready to go to the next step, you can click on Make List. And actually, if you wanted to, you could even export it right now from here. But what I'm going to do is click Make a List, and we're going to name this thing. So we're going to call this Polk County, Florida. And if you want to add monitoring, insights, and automations, what this can do is basically keep you up to date as this list changes. So this isn't going to be just a static list where you create it at one point in time and then that's it. This list will be constantly updated. And not only that, but it can actually send you notifications when updates happen. And it can do that for, I believe, 10,000 properties at a time. And once you turn it on, you can't turn it off for 5 days because apparently this is like a super valuable thing that a lot of people use. So I'm not going to do it in this example, but just be aware that that's something you can do. And now we've got our list here. So I'm going to go over here and click this back button, and now we're going to look at all the lists that I have here in my profile so far. And there's some stuff to be aware of just in terms of what we're looking at here. So first of all, you'll notice that a lot of these things have this add monitoring button. So if you didn't turn on monitoring, you can do that at any point, and that's totally optional. You can see on this example, I did turn it on, and it's just going to show us how many properties are new since the last time we logged in. So if you're like really focused on one market and you want to see all the stuff going on there and just be aware of every possible relevant thing, that could be helpful. Now over here, where you see this lightning bolt, so that means that it is a dynamic list. So it's always being updated. If you ever see a diamond icon here instead of a lightning bolt, that means it's a static list. So it's not going to continually keep updating. Now over here where it says insights, when we click on this, so this can give you a lot of very interesting information about the list you generated. Things that, you know, can be really useful to be aware of, especially if you want to create a lookalike list, which is basically saying, you know, I understand how these people operate on this particular list. Now I want to create the same kind of list in another market. Once you see these insights, it's going to be a lot easier to do that, because essentially what this does is it gives you a snapshot of your list, just showing you roughly what is the gender of most people on the list, what's the age, what is their education, their income, their net worth, are they married or single? And this is a very overgeneralized view of what's going on. If you want to see what it's using to come up with these conclusions here, you can look on over here. Over here where it says owner type, we can see that the majority of them, up to 31%, are individuals. But close behind that is corporations, which is 30%. We can see that 26% of these owners are married, and 10% of these properties are owned by multiple owners, and 3% are owned by trusts. So maybe that's useful information to you, maybe not, but it's there. We can also see the gender makeup of who owns these properties. We can see the age range, and then we can scroll on here and see the general education level of these property owners, and the marital status, and the income that a lot of these people have, and the net worth, and how many of them have children at home versus not, what the ethnicity is, their charitable giving amounts, their interests. We can see how many of these people are business owners and what the occupation groups are. I don't even know where all this information is coming from, but it's clearly not coming from one place. And I think that's part of the value that PropertyRadar brings, is that it pulls in a lot of information to not just like create a list for you, but really help you understand that list and how to segment that even further. Say if you wanted to separate this list to like, okay, I want only the Sonoma County landowners that are, between the ages of 50 and 70. And then a separate list for the ones that are 50 years old and younger. That might help you send different types of messages to those different groups. Or say if you wanted to segment the lists based on people who have a graduate level education versus a high school education or whatever. If you have this data all in one place, it makes it really easy to do that. Over here on this next icon over, we can also see the insights based on the property types, not just the people. And this can also be a useful thing to know. So just like the other view, we can see a snapshot of our list, like what types of properties there are in the square footage and the bedrooms and bath. I actually find that a little confusing because this is supposed to be all vacant land, yet we're seeing, so that doesn't make sense. Maybe that's some kind of mistake there. We can also see the value, the equity, the years owned, structure, and age. So again, the structure age, that also doesn't make sense. So I might have to cross-check this list and make sure there's not actually buildings on these things. We can also see the sales volume, the transaction volume per month, estimated equity, a lot of this stuff that can just be useful to see. And, one quick example is the fact that I'm seeing some things that indicate that perhaps not all of these properties actually are land, because if it's truly vacant land, then it should not be owner occupied, and there should not be bedrooms and bathrooms and anything about a structure. So everything that would indicate maybe I need to revisit this list and tweak some of the settings to make sure I'm truly narrowing these things down a little bit. And I'll actually do this right now. So one thing you can do is create list segments. And this is where I could take this same Sonoma County land list and create a different version of it. So this is arguably a little bit general, kind of, depending on what you consider general. But based on these insights and then also these property owner insights, we can go and create a new segment of our list. So we could go back here to Discover. And this time, as we create this new list, we're going to go down here to My Data. And we're going to make sure that we start with this option that says In All Lists. And we're going to select this one. And what this does is this says, as we're starting this new list, at a bare minimum, it needs to be the same properties that we had over here in this Sonoma County land list. So that's the starting point, but we can go even further and narrow this down a little bit more. So we're going to go back here to search. And then let's say we want to only target the people on this list that are ages 50 and above. We could add this criteria as well. And now I just brought it down to 344 property owners. Something else that can be useful, especially if your plan is to cold call these people or send them text messages or emails or something like that, is you can say, we only want to have the properties where the owner's phone number is available or the owner's email address is available, or whatever else you see here on this list. You can filter it that way, assuming it doesn't show you back, 0 results. So we're going to say, has owner mobile phone. So we only want to see those. We would click yes, and then add this criteria, and we'll see how much smaller it makes the list here. Okay, so basically just cut that in half. But the nice thing is, if, the owner's mobile phone number isn't available, and if that's important to us, then we're just not even going to get it. Say if we were only ever planning to call or text them, and we were never going to send them direct mail in the first place, that's a really useful thing to know before you get that far. And this is another example of a cool feature in PropertyRadar that I have not seen in any other data service. Some other data services can kind of do the same thing, but it's not all built to work together like this. So once we have our list, and this is basically a segment of the original list because we took the original Sonoma County land list and then we layered these additional filters on it. So we could do this even another time and do the same thing to the owners that are between 25 and 50 to send to a different segment of the list. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, what we can do from here is a bunch of different things. Looks like we can make calls and send texts and do direct mail. Looks like if we do click on direct mail, it's basically going to send us to a third-party website called Express Copy. I would not do that personally just because that's not who I use. I've never even really heard of them until now. So I've got a different direct mail service that I use for this. So what I would be doing at this point is I would go down and export to file. Or if I was planning to send texts or emails, I could purchase that information here and basically just do skip tracing from right within PropertyRadar. But if we go ahead and export it to file, so list view is what we're going to get by default. So, if we were getting this list from some other data service, this, I believe, is like the typical output that you would see where it shows the owner, the property type, the address, city, estimated equity, a lot of that stuff. And you can even create a new field set if there are like certain things you want to see that aren't automatically included in there. So by default, it's going to have these 13 options over here. But you might want to see like the legal description of the property. So let's see if we can find that. And I'm actually not finding that legal description. Doesn't necessarily have to be a deal killer. If you're a land investor, that might be important to you, depending on what you need it for. However, some things I am finding that's helpful is like the longitude and latitude. That can be super useful for a lot of different reasons, and a ton of other information here. So you can choose any one of these things and bring it over if you want to. For example, if you wanted the city and state, we can even rearrange it based on that. Bring over the latitude and the longitude. If this is a delinquent tax list, or if that's what you're trying to do, that could be included too. You get the idea. There's all kinds of stuff you can include in here, and then you can save it. So whatever information you want on there, just make sure it's showing on there before you export it. Now, something else that might also be useful here, again, if we need their phone number or email address for whatever reason, we can also include those things here too. So we'll find that. We'll find primary contact phone 1, put that at the bottom. Primary contact email 1, put that at the bottom as well. There's lots of other stuff we could add here too, if we really wanted to, depending on who you are and what kind of marketing you're going to be sending these people and what you're hoping to do. So I'm going to update this thing, updated phone email. So now we're going to use this thing. And by the way, I'm kind of doing this on the fly. There are probably other things I would do to perfect this, but I'm trying to just get through this quick to show you how this works. So don't like follow this to a T based on what you're trying to do. Just use your own critical thinking to create the list the way you want to do it. We'll go ahead and click continue here. And it looks like we can add mobile numbers if we want to, or we can include or exclude phone numbers and email addresses if we want to. We did include those fields, so depending on what you want, it's up to you. And it looks like to do that is going to cost a little bit of extra money because it's basically skip tracing those things. But whatever you want to do, it's up to you. You can also use whatever available balance you have, if you have any balance, or you can just pay for it, you know, right here, right now from the card you have on the file. So it looks like with my selections, I'm gonna have to pay $8.40 additional for this information, which is really not that bad. A price of 8 cents per phone and email for skip tracing. I've seen much higher than that. So go ahead and do that. So it looks like with my selections here, I need to add to the balance because I have to do that in order to complete this purchase. So I'm gonna add to the balance, and we'll use my card on file and pay that right now so that we can move forward. There we go. So I added $10 to the balance so I can pay for this $8.40 amount. And then I have to check this thing to say that, you know, it's all good to go, and then purchase this, and we will see how the list comes out. All right, and I'm going to export this as a CSV file, download this, get it pretty quick here. There you go. We've got our phone numbers here. We've got our email addresses there. Might want to blur those out for privacy purposes, and the phone numbers too, but they're right there. It looks like there's some blanks here, so it didn't bring back the information for everybody, but still a lot of great info. And I would probably add a little bit more information to this list, like for example, not only the mailing address, but also the property address itself, assuming that's available. So again, I didn't like perfect this thing before I exported it, but the idea was just to show you how this kind of thing works. And if you do want to add more information to your list, as you saw just a few minutes ago, there's a ton of stuff you can include in these lists if you want to. Okay, so if we go back here to my list, just show you a couple more things. So there are these automations you can use. We can click on this one here. So you can be notified anytime there are new matches or status changes to your list. You can get mobile notifications. You can get a daily summary email or an immediate email. There's also a Zapier integration that you can use if you want. And if you know anything about Zapier, you know that's a big deal because now you can hook it up to all kinds of stuff all over the internet. So there's lots of capabilities there. And then if we go back here and click this connect button, if the list is less than 1,000, you can make calls, send voicemails, send text messages. You can also do direct mail, which as I showed you earlier, will send you to a third-party website. You can print mailing labels, do a mail merge. You can even get into online ads, purchase more emails and phone numbers, all that stuff. So that's not everything to know about PropertyRadar, but that's a lot of it. And if you're looking for more information about how to research an individual property and how the property profile reports look and all that, I've got a separate video explaining how that works. Be sure to check that out too. If you want to check out PropertyRadar and do a free trial and see how it works, again, we do have an affiliate link for PropertyRadar. It's just REtipster.com/PropertyRadar, all one word. And I'll have a link to that beneath this video if you want to check it out. Also, as a little incentive to sign up through our affiliate link, I put together a report and just a big list of different ways you can potentially filter your lists. If you're running out of ideas or you're just looking for new creative ways to pursue different types of people, be sure to check that out too. And you can get that for free, again, if you sign up through our affiliate link and then forward your invoice to me at Seth plus PropertyRadar at REtipster.com. And as soon as I get that email, I'll send you a quick reply with a link where you can download this big list of property filtering criteria ideas. So Thanks again for watching. Appreciate you. Whether you use PropertyRadar or something completely different, I wish you all the best as you're getting out there trying to find motivated sellers and other opportunities to work with people in the industry. Thanks for watching. See you next time.